next thing we have is a public hearing. Ms. Russell, will you call the public hearing?
Yes, it's listed as one on your agenda. It's regarding the possible adoption of impact fees for drainage in accordance with Chapter 395, the Texas Local Government Code. No one has reserved time to appear before the hearing.
City Engineer Mark Layton will lead in the presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor and City Council. This is the second of two public hearings required under state law for the adoption of a drainage impact fee. My presentation will be brief this morning. Some of it will be just reminders of things we had discussed at the last public hearing, and then we will sit and take input from the Public Working Council as we go forward. Next slide, please. Just a reminder, back in January 16th of this year, we had the first of these two public hearings under state law, Chapter 395 of the Local Government Code. At that hearing, you took testimony on issues related to the land use assumptions in the drainage impact fee calculation and the drainage impact fee improvements plan. This public hearing is for the maximum fee calculated in the study that was completed. Subsequent to this, in 2 weeks or upon closure of the public hearing, we will be bringing the ordinance back, at which time council will actually adopt and set the actual rates to be implemented. Next slide. Brief reminder of the Rebuild Houston initiative. This is one of the 4 funding sources that went into the Rebuild Houston initiative. This is the developer impact fee. Again, I remind you that the intent of this is to fund improvements associated with new development within the city. Next slide. Briefly, this portion of the funding is growth paying for growth. As I mentioned, it's covered under Chapter 395 of the Local Government Code. That allows for the imposition of water, wastewater, drainage, and roadway impact fees. The City of Houston has had water and wastewater impact fees for new development since 1990. You are here today to discuss the drainage impact fee. We do not have at this point in time a roadway impact fee. It is a one-time fee, unlike the drainage charge, which is an annual charge. It is a one-time fee, and it is to recover costs associated with new development for storm drainage improvements. The findings presented this morning in the report were prepared by consultant hired by the Public Works, Kingley-Horn and Associates. That document is available on the Rebuild Houston website. It has been available since December. If you choose to have it, and I believe each council member was provided with a written copy back in January before the first public hearing. Next slide. Brief reminder, unlike the water and wastewater impact fees, which cover the city as an aggregate, because of state law, the drainage impact fee is allocated by geographic boundaries, physical watershed boundaries. We attempted to divide the city up into 8 basic service areas that are consistent with boundaries defined under the Tropical Storm Allison Recovery Project after the 2001 Tropical Storm Allison. Next slide. The study has determined the maximum allowable fee under state law, which is what the hearing is for today. The presentation to the Impact Fee Advisory Committee, which for the City of Houston is the city's planning commission, was held on February the 21st. At that meeting, the commission approved a motion to send the report forward with the maximum rates identified in the reports for your consideration in support of this public hearing this morning. We will hear the public input today, and then as I indicated, we will be back later this month with an ordinance that will actually set the rates going forward. Next slide. The 8 service areas within the city have differing rates because of the differing projected needs. This is based on a 10-year horizon of development patterns projected in the city and the availability of existing infrastructure to serve that. Again, I want to remind council that if you look at the maps in the study report, just because certain watersheds don't have any projects in the drainage impact fee improvement plan does not mean that we will not be doing Rebuild Houston projects in those areas. Those are only projects that have an identified component that could be attributed to new development. Next slide. The schedule we're on, as I mentioned, We have had the first public hearing. Council passed the ordinance after the first hearing on 2 readings and set the public hearing date for today. We will take comment today. Upon closure of this public hearing, then, as I mentioned, we'll be bringing back the ordinance for council's consideration. And I believe that is all I have.
Or you guys discuss more first?
Mark, embellish my understanding of this a little bit. The impact fees, they are regulated with an umbrella from the state, correct?
Yes, the procedure for establishing and adopting them are dictated by local government code under state law.
Okay. That applies if there were a roadway impact fee that still is regulated somewhat from the state.
Yes, if the city were to choose to adopt a roadway impact fee, we would still have to follow the same procedures.
And in 2 sentences, just explain what a roadway impact fee would look like in the city.
I'm not sure I can do it in 2 sentences, but I'll try.
3 sentences.
A roadway impact fee is a little bit different than water, wastewater, and the drainage impact fee because you now are dealing with a broader user category, and your users are much larger than just adjacent properties, if I can say it that way. So the analysis has to account for not only for a roadway, what volume of traffic would use that roadway, what would be its, in effect, its origin and its destination, and that goes into the calculation of how much of that roadway capacity then you allocate to new development. Again, I go back to the whole purpose of the impact fee is to allocate a portion of cost of infrastructure to new development. Water and wastewater and storm drainage is a little bit more prescriptive in how you calculate that. Roadway impact fees require a little bit more refinement, and it's my understanding that the various communities in the state that have done those have taken different approaches to it, so there's not a one-size-fits-all.
Thank you.
Councilmember Costello.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Latham. Thank you. I'm going to ask you questions I already know the answers to, but I want you to publicly respond to them.
Yes, sir.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the maximum rate that we're evaluating here is not the rate that we will be charging.
The maximum fee you are considering is correct. It is not, it could be the rate that you adopt, but it is not required to be the rate that you adopt. It simply said the rate you adopt will be somewhere between 0 and the maximum rate.
Okay, my understanding according to state law is that we cannot charge more than 50% of the adopted maximum rate.
And I need to clarify terms here. When I'm speaking about the maximum rate, I'm talking about the maximum allowable rate, which already takes into account that 50% reduction.
Okay, thank you. So the costs that are identified here are not, is actually 50%.
The costs that are in the table that you have before you represent a 50% reduction of what the calculated number was. So those are the rates that you could consider as your upper limit.
Okay, could you help my colleagues, what is service unit? Is that an acre?
Now, in this particular case, a service unit for the drainage impact fee will be 1,000 square feet of impervious cover. It is a measurement that we are already using under the drainage utility, and we felt it was the appropriate service unit going forward for future development under the impact fee.
Okay, so in certain situations when a developer wants to use low impact development techniques, he will get credit associated with the impervious cover calculations, is that correct?
If low impact impervious materials that do not create impervious cover under the drainage charge or under the impact fee, they would not be charged for those particular areas.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Green.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Latham, for sitting down to meet with me yesterday on this and some other issues. I appreciate it. As you know, my position
Yes, sir.
with regard to this, I think there should be a more equitable way that the city can assess the impact fee. The way it's delineated here is that you have one watershed that's really will be assessed over 50% for the entire city with regard to how dollars will be collected. And so I just don't, I think there's an equitable way to do it. I think my colleague just spoke with regard to the maximum rate, and while the city has the opportunity to charge zero or up to the maximum rate, I believe it's going to be the Public Works recommendation that the maximum rate be charged in this instance. Is that correct?
At this point, after reviewing the study and reviewing the findings and based on public input received so far, at this point, Public Works would not intend to recommend anything other than the maximum. But again, the council will make that decision when they set and adopt the rates.
Okay. And I know we have another hearing coming up and the final vote on this. I will be offering an amendment. I would just hope that you guys would look at maybe from an equity standpoint that perhaps there might be a better way with regard to rate distribution on the drainage impact fee. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Lathan, thank you for the presentation. And I just want to follow up on what my colleague, Councilmember Green, was talking about. Can you just go over why this Sims Bayou area and Vince Bayou, why is there such a huge discrepancy? I don't understand that.
If you look at those two particular portions of the city right now, there is less development on the ground than in other parts of the city. So the infrastructure is not there to the extent that it is in other watersheds. Couple that with the fact that the population and job projections by HGAC over the next 40 years show that those areas will be areas that will be ripe for development and increasing in development. So the fact that you have less infrastructure in place, you will need infrastructure. That infrastructure will be attributable to new development, and hence there is a larger percentage of cost then that could be allocated to new development as opposed to being allocated to address existing drainage problems.
So I understand that point, but I just think that if you look at what we're charging, you're going to stifle development. It's not going to help development. I actually would, this is an area that I'm promoting and trying to grow, and I just don't see where this is helping to encourage development.
I understand that, Councilmember. In my discussions with developers and the community, various organizations regarding the rates, we've had discussions about the disparity in the rates, but to this point, none of the developers that I have spoken with have indicated that even the numbers for the Sims or Vince Bayou would necessarily preclude them from investing in those watersheds. The dollar impacts regarded as a function or as a fraction of an overall investment is not significant.
Well, I just want to repeat, I want us to be mindful. We are going to expand out the airport. We are going to allow Southwest Airlines to fly internationally, and had interest from major hoteliers, new businesses that are going to create a lot of opportunity. And I think people are going to want to live and work closer to an international airport. So I think we just have to keep that in mind.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bradford.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning. Mr. Latham, I want to go back to maybe a little different version of Councilmember Green's inquiry. Is there a way to equalize the rate distribution if this council were to decide that as an option? Is there a way to do that? And if so, what is that way?
In theory, Councilmember, the rate for each, you will set a rate for each of the 8 service areas. Those rates for each service area can be between 0 and the maximum established in the report for each service area. You can lever any of those service areas up or down at the discussion and recommendation of City Council.
And as long as we are within that 0 to 50% margin, there's nothing requiring us to leverage the same rate for each district, correct?
No, there's not.
So one way to equalize it would be to do a disproportionate rate in some of the areas.
That would be one approach. One point I would like to make sure that everybody is aware of is the rate that is adopted for each service area and the funds that are collected in that service area can only be utilized in that service area over a 10-year horizon. So under the scenario that you presented, a lesser charge in Sims Vince Bayou, if council chose to adopt a lesser rate, would mean we would collect less impact fees, But if the development still comes, then the burden of the cost for that additional development will reside with the city, not with the developer.
Is there an option or some other way to equalize the distribution that we haven't discussed?
Not that we discussed, no, sir.
Okay, is there another way that you know of that you haven't discussed?
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, that's okay, we want to just,
If you were to look at the aggregate potential collection, you could adjust rates accordingly. But again, the rates are calculated per requirements of state law, so all you really would, in the end, be doing is just setting a different rate within each service area other than what the study recommends.
so it is possible to equalize the rate distribution better than it is here within the law?
No, I didn't say it was better, I just said it was different.
No.
You could, council has the ability to set whatever rates you want. And our estimate of the annual collections, if you were to impose the maximum rate, is on the order of about $1.5 million a year.
Okay.
So if you took $1.5 million a year, and depending on what rate you wanted to use for the projected development across the city, in theory, you could calculate a rate that would be universal across there.
Okay.
It would have disproportionality, though, in terms of you would have it higher in areas that the study would not reflect higher, and you would have it lower, back up. You can't set the rate any higher than the maximum, so even a watershed, for instance, like, I'm trying to remember, raised by, for instance, at $8.65 per service unit, the rate that you establish cannot be any higher than $8.65.
Thank you very much. I want to just get some maybe verbiage or language from you, so when we're trying to construct the amendments, there's language that, we've heard Public Works indicate that is doable if the council were to adopt such. Thank you, I appreciate your comment. Thanks, Mayor.
To be clear, so in the, you have 4 watersheds that cannot be assessed a fee because they have a 0 maximum rate, and
They cannot be charged anything if you were to approach it from an equalization standpoint, those still would have to remain at 0.
and it doesn't matter what we charge in the other districts, that money cannot be spent in the Sims bio watershed.
That's correct.
So we would be assessing more on the other districts, but we wouldn't be helping Sims bio.
Correct.
Councilman Rabs.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much for coming and presenting. I just have a simple question, just to make it a simple explanation. When you're looking at District D specifically, part of that area that we're talking about is assessing a fee. So when you have a lot of open land and a lot of space for development, and we're asking for people to come, especially on Toilet Corridor, Sunnyside, South Park, all of that.
Yes,
And we're looking at this, how are we explaining to the developers, okay, we want you to come here, but then we want to charge you higher? Would that encourage or discourage them from wanting to come and build along those particular areas? Because we're trying to say, okay, come, but these are some of the areas that you're looking at. So I'm just trying to get an explanation on how do we give a simple explanation, especially for the constituents that are there, the developers that we're trying to attract, and and then looking at your fee schedule that's listed here. So if you can just help me with that a little bit, so I can understand that.
in the discussions that we've had with the development community, the dollars, the impact fees that are proposed, the majority of I would say all of them that I've spoken to so far, have not indicated that a charge in Sims Bayou of $57.24 per service unit would make or break a project that they would intend to build in the Sims Bayou watershed. In fact, some of them articulated that with the rate set where it is, what it might do is have a project that would be considered marginal and not necessarily in the best interest of the district, that could fund itself. With this additional, it wouldn't come to the district. So I guess what I'm saying is you might keep some of the lesser desired projects out because financially they're not sound to begin with. But the projects that would be moving forward in District D or District K in the Simmons Bayou watershed, based on the conversations we've had so far with developers, this fee would not be a deterrent to them moving forward with projects.
And I guess my next question will be to you, Madam Mayor, about council will make that final determination. What will we base it on, or say what fee that we're gonna be looking at? Will you send us out proposals, or how are we gonna do the formula to get to the fee? How are we gonna vote on that? What are we looking at?
Councilmember, the formula's already been done. Based on state law, the Public Works Department has calculated the maximum amount that can be charged in any one watershed. There's not a formula, council may decide to reduce the amount charged. To give you an idea of the scale, say you're gonna build a single-family home, this is $57 for 1,000 square feet of impervious surface. A standard lot in some parts of the city might be 5,000 square feet, so this would add $57 to the cost of the home. Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you